Hey, welcome to the Cam Otis Show. With Thanksgiving this week and the beginning of the holiday season, now is the time that business owners start looking forward to the next year. As we make our plans and predictions for the coming year, there's a plethora of outside influences that can confuse and discourage us. So, what does 2023 have in store for business? Otis and I discuss a recent report from Gartner that outlines the top priorities for your business in 2023. We talk about what these priorities are, why they're so important, and what you can do to get ahead of the rest of the competition. How can you become a student of the game when it comes to business? How can gratitude transform your team? How can you create certainty out of uncertainty? And should you really be spending your money on pizza parties and ping pong tables for your office? Otis and I answer all of this and much more to get you ready for the challenges of 2023. Quick reminder to rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. You can also find the full videos of the show on our YouTube page. And if you learned something from Otis or I during our conversation, make sure to share this episode with someone else so they can learn it too. This episode is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose. Has the turmoil of the last few years left your team feeling stressed and fatigued? You're not alone. 45% of employees are feeling that same fatigue, and that fatigue can leave even great teams in disarray and hurt productivity. All that change and confusion makes it hard for team members to see their future with the company, and the biggest drivers of talent retention are a compelling career path and a happy team environment. Things that are becoming rarer and rarer in businesses around the country. The biggest priority for businesses in 2023 is fixing these and other problems that create dysfunctional teams. So get a head start on the competition with Team Unity. Team Unity by Power Tribe will make sure that you keep your top talent around. During this 12-week program, you'll create a plan that your whole team buys into and sees their own future inside of. Root out any dysfunction in your team and create flow so that you can attract and retain the top talent that your business needs to be successful. And we'll help you build a customer-focused approach that reverses your shrinking sales. You can learn more about Team Unity by Power Tribe at findyourpurpose.coach. And now here's Cam and Otis with the show.
Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. Here we go with something new and different. Where is the workforce going to go? That's the problem. You know, everybody wants to know how to hire the best, how to keep the best, but nobody really is diving into it. And that's, you know, I had a great conversation with a friend of mine. I'll give him a shout out because he's going to be a guest on the show in the future, Kevin Knievel, last night. And the thing that he was talking about, and he actually, if you don't know who Kevin is, he does a lot of keynote speaking on mindset and LinkedIn, believe it or not. And what's interesting is one of the things that we talked about last night over a beer, of course, was the fact that why don't we humans, people, why don't we study the things that are important to us? I find that really interesting, you know, especially when you start talking about, you know, business, running a business, being successful in business, having a powerful team. Why aren't we studying what's the best aspect for a team? What keeps people interested? How do I attract the best talent to my team? And then once they're there, how do I keep them engaged and utilize them fully? And I find that, you know, somewhat ironic because, you know, I do a lot of reading and studying on various things. And as a business owner, what I found is a lot of business owners dive in on how do I maximize my profit, which, you know, you should do as a business owner. But what they forget about is one of the ways that you can maximize your profit is you have a powerful team.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I thought in this discussion we could talk more about is how do I keep my team engaged?
You know, but that makes me think of is our conversation around that study talking about MBAs and, you know, the decline in wages when MBAs became hired in these large firms. And the really interesting thing that it makes me think is, you know, when we talk profit's important, right? You need money. That's why I love studying economics. Money makes the world go around, right? But if you make that thing that's good the only thing you're looking at, you set yourself up for failure. If you make that the only thing you're focusing on is the money side, you miss everything else of it. It makes me think when you watch, and we're not in the right time of year for this reference, but that's okay, but like the NFL draft, and they go through and they get all the stats and stuff. The stats tell you a good story. And you can get a lot out of that, but the best players are not going to do the best inside the combine. And it's because they always say the soft skills, the intangibles, all those different types of things. Our captain up here for the Avalanche, Landeskog, he got drafted so high, and he always said, I was not as good as those other guys, but they all said I had the soft skills, and I still don't know what that means. Like, those other things matter more than we think. And the more you focus on them, the more you can leverage those things to be successful. And I think that's what that really comes down to. If you're just looking at profit, then, it's like you taught me years ago, be a student of the game, talking about rugby. Mm-hmm. If being a student of the game isn't just studying how to win, it's studying how to get better. And the scrums, the lineouts, the way you run the ball, the way you tackle, every little aspect of the game and every aspect of everyone else's game. You have to learn the entire aspect of it rather than just focusing on the score line. If you just focus on the score line, you're not going to get very far. And I think, as we look forward into 2023 and we look at the changing dynamics of the business landscape, we've been talking a lot this year. We started off with great resignation. Now it's quiet quitting, right? There's so many different things going on. And what it really comes down to is those intangibles and those soft skills inside of the business. And if you don't have those inside of your business, you're going to drive people away. And what that really goes back to is the leader and the leadership of the team, whether it's a manager, CEO, whatever, and the leaders being able to cast that vision for the future, being able to get people involved in that vision for the future and get people bought in. And when you have a team environment where people bought in, they're working together, you're going to get better outcomes in it. And, the reason I want to talk about this so much today is, you sent over some data from Gartner about the top 5 priorities for HR leaders in 2023. And just to go through them real quick, and then we'll hit them all individually, from first to fifth is leader and manager effectiveness, organizational design and change management, employee experience, recruiting, and future of work. Now, Dad, sorry, I zoned out there for a second. Did I say profit? Was profit one of the main priorities for them?
No, maybe it was number 6. I don't know, but definitely one.
It might be on the longer list.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Truthfully, the people on your team, your employees, the people you pay, unless there is, and I'll start it off this way, and then I'll talk an exception or two. They don't care about profit in the business. They really don't. They just want to be engaged. They want to feel value added, and they want to get their paycheck every 2 weeks. That's what they care about. Now, start to get into bonus and profit sharing and stuff like that in some businesses, yeah. Then they might be more engaged in it. But really, in the end, that employee, all they care about is that check in their bank account on Friday. They don't care whether or not there's more profit, there's been cost savings, and how does that affect them? I mean, and I'm going to take a step out of this a little bit in a little bit of American culturism. It's always not in my backyard. I remember years ago when nuclear energy was starting to come, and we won't get into it needs to come back, but it was starting to first happen, and everybody was talking about, well, what do we do with the waste? The 100,000 year half-life or whatever ridiculous amount of time. And everybody was okay as long as it wasn't in their backyard. And that's how America votes, by the way, too. Those of you who understand politics, we don't vote.
Oh, yeah. Well,
most people don't vote because of the second and third order effect. They vote because, how does that affect me? Are my property taxes going to go up if that mill levy gets approved? There's the word I was looking for, tough word. Or what? And when you take that and you move that into the business world, in the team environment, how do I get that individual who, truthfully, most of them, and I'm going to say probably 70% of people in jobs are concerned more about just getting the paycheck on Friday than they are about anything else. So how do you move them from that attitude to they are fully involved and engaged in the organization, and they care about the success of the organization? They may not care that there's a 2.5% increase in profit, but they see the success of the organization, and that's what they care about. And that's a whole different attitude than I show up at 9 every day, the old 9 to 5, because I don't know anybody that actually works that, but the old 9 to 5 sort of thing. And as long as I get my check on Friday, what's the song, Camden? One scotch, one bourbon.
Dolly Parton working 9 to 5?
No. Blues.
Well, if you're thinking George Thorogood, one bourbon, one scotch, one beer, I don't think he has a job in that. I think that's
no. He doesn't have a job, and
stuff.
it's actually the landlord that wants the check by Friday. But that's what keeps going through my mind. Yeah.
Next Friday come, I didn't have the rent, and out the door I went. Right. All just taking care of himself. Right.
Right.
And I think that's so right.
He got a job and the reason he doesn't have a job is because he's tired. And here's an interesting aspect in culture going on right now. There's a lot of people out there that are tired. And if you ever watch the movie Platoon about the Vietnam War, old private there says, "I'm not lazy, Sergeant. I'm just tired. I'm tired." So you know what? The reason you're tired is because you don't give a shit. That's the reason people are tired.
Well,
and if they're not engaged and
our Stoics.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, our Stoics would say if you're giving in to being tired, that you're just giving in to pain. Giving in to pain is giving in to weakness, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a choice you could always make, but you can always choose the opposite, right? And I think the interesting thing, when you talk about even being tired, like what we're talking about here, that first stat of leader and manager effectiveness. What that really goes back to is, do you as the employee believe in your leader? And what a good leader is going to do is they're going to tie you into their vision. You're an important part of it. The reason that people are leaving jobs so much and the reason they don't believe in their leaders and all these type of things is because they view themselves as interchangeable. They think they are expendable pieces inside of the organization. And that is not on themselves for the mindset. That's on the leader to change their mind, right? Because that is the status quo that most people come in at, is that I am an interchangeable cog in this wheel and in this organization, especially for a big organization. It's on the leader to be able to change the way that they see that. And that goes back to the leader being able to cast that vision for them. And if you, as the leader, are able to connect with the people inside your organization and get them to believe in you and believe in your effectiveness, that effectiveness is going to directly go into your vision, and that is going to keep people around. And what that really goes back to, I think, is whether or not you as the leader are seeing them, and again, this goes back to our MBA conversation. Are you seeing them as a asset that you can grow and you could be leveraging for the growth of the business in the future, or are you seeing them as a cost? And if you're seeing your team as a cost, then they're not going to view you as effective because you don't have that relationship with them, because you're viewing them as just a cog that's replaceable. And if you're leading like that, you're going to drive people away. That attrition is going to be high. You talk about people being tired. One of the stats from the Gartner study is 45% of HR leaders say that their employees are fatigued from change and the stress that comes with change. If you're tired, you need inspiration. Right? I mean, I'll throw this over to you. If you're, whether it's, coaching a rugby team or inside of a business, if people are tired and they can't work, what do you do as a leader to get them to get motivated, to get energized?
Well, if it's the rugby team, it's up the bank. Quite simple. But for those of you who don't know, that means the hill that was next to the practice field. We go up the bank. That's how we make them not tired.
But why are we going up the bank?
Yes, we're going up the bank.
You go up the bank because to take John's line, because otherwise you're going to get dicked by Denver East on Saturday, right? This motivation of you have a choice right now. It's this or it's this. Mm-hmm. And it's the carrot or the stick. And you make that carrot look nice. That's how you get people to get working, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, and And as a leader, it's your job to set the standards. It's your job to create the culture. And the way you create the culture is by establishing what it is that organization is going to do. Is it a group of 5 people, or is it a team? Are they employees or are they team members? Really, we used to joke about this all the time. Words mean things, but you know what? They really do. I worked for some bosses back in the good old Army days that, say, well, we don't have problems, we don't have issues, we have challenges. But we'd make fun of that, but it was so true. If you think about it, What's a problem? A problem is something that's a block. It's a block. And matter of fact, I was reading something the other day, a quote, and I can't remember who it was, but a problem gets smaller when it's confronted. And if you think about that sense, in that sense, we eliminate problems by attacking the problems and moving forward. And when we look at this team organization, how do we pull the people together? Well, they have to have clarity. They have to understand. Here's another metaphor about jobs: is where's my fence? What are my job responsibilities? In other words, where's my property end and begin? Right? Is that fence line on the western edge of the property, the M-Bar 5 Ranch? Is that fence line where it's supposed to be, where I don't have access to water? Or is that fence line supposed to be a little bit further to the west by 200 meters, where I do have? So I have to have that understanding, not just in the ownership of the ranch, but even in your job. I have to have, what is the fence around my responsibilities? What am I supposed to do? What am I responsible for? When we create that, then as a human, we're like, okay, now I know where I'm at. I know my physical location. It doesn't mean I can't go out the gate and go over there and help out Bob, or get something else tossed into my fenced area. Like all of a sudden, I've been running 10 cattle and now I've got 5 goats. I got to take goats. 5 goats I got to take care of. Okay. But you know what? That's added to my responsibility in my fence. I, as an employee, need to know what my responsibilities are. Most people in the world want to do good, want to work hard, want to succeed. But if you don't set for them what the parameters are, whether you call them KPIs or key performance indicators or some other objectives or some other terminology that you may use, it doesn't matter what you call them, but if you establish those and they have something to work towards and understand what they're responsible for and what success looks like, you know what? It's like, sports. That's why sports is so simple, right? I know that I win the game by scoring more points than the opponent. But in life, in business, in your job, do you truly understand how to win? Because what does win equal? Win synonymous with success, right? How am I successful in my job? Do I have to make 4 phone calls a day? Do I have to sweep the floor twice a day? Do I need to empty the trash cans? Do I need a mop? Do I need to put up a report? Do I need to count the dollars at the end of it? Whatever that is, I should understand what it is my job is, what success looks like for me. Otherwise, I'm going through the motions, going back to your quiet quitting. There's going to be people out there because, it's a human population. You're going to have those folks, whatever that percentage is, quiet quitting. But you know what? If you establish, here's what you do, here's what you're responsible for, here's what you have to accomplish in order to be successful, the majority of people out there will understand that and will thrive in that environment. Because you mentioned this a minute ago, that future look. If I know that if I do these things, at the end of the day, I've had a successful day, I'm future looking to be successful because I want to be happy. I don't know a whole lot of people who walk around How do I screw this up? How do I fail? Walk through life like that. Most of those people, we won't count those. Those are the outliers, right? In our population mean curve. But if you set those parameters up as the leader, if your team members, each individual, understands what they're responsible for and what success looks like, you've made huge headway in creating a team and getting buy-in from the individuals in that organization to make it a team.
Yeah, 100%. And, that makes me think of, and I'm resisting the urge to drop some names right now because these are people who are close to me and the work that they've been in, people that have left their jobs and maybe they're thinking about leaving their jobs too. Reason I'm leaving names out of it. But it goes back to exactly what you're saying. Responsibilities and then freedom to complete those responsibilities. If you aren't giving those as a leader, then people are going to get frustrated because you're not giving them their zone to work in. And then even if they have their zone to work in and they don't have the freedom to do it how they see fit, it's going to drive them crazy. And nobody likes to work in that environment. Again, maybe we're talking our curve. Maybe, that 10% on the end of the curve. Okay, yeah, maybe they like to work like that. But the most people and the people that you want on your team, because you don't want that 10% of the curve on your team. You want people on probably the other side of the outliers who really are the go-getters, right? Those people want responsibility. Those people want freedom. And when you give them that, they're always going to outperform what they were doing before. I mean, this is going to sound a little cheesy when we're talking business, but it makes me think all the time with the Engage Foundation with my little kids' rugby, this happens where you get a kid who's better than the rest. And he hates what he's doing. She hates what she's doing. And then I go over and say, hey, you're the captain today. What do you think we should do? All of a sudden, I've got this all-star player who wants to build up the rest of the team because I gave them responsibility. I gave them the freedom to explore those responsibilities and to complete those things as they see fit. And that's what it really comes down to, a little bit of anecdotal stuff to add on to the stats we're talking about. But it goes back to responsibilities that you're defining for your team and then giving them the freedom for that. And talking it back to the leader and manager effectiveness, if you can't define the responsibilities, that you don't know what you're doing as a leader. Straight up. If you can't give them the freedom to complete the work as they see fit, then I wouldn't say you don't know what you're doing as a leader, but you are an insecure human being. Because that comes from insecurity. Because you think they need to do it your way, otherwise they're not going to get it right. Because you don't trust them. And if you don't trust them, it's because you're not trusting yourself as a leader, right? Little trust triad for you, starting to steal your thunder. Yeah. But I think the really interesting thing there is when you talk about the effectiveness of the leader is you have to be honest with yourself, right? And you have to, if you're not giving them the freedom, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, I don't trust myself as a leader and I need to be better so I can't trust myself, right? But I think there's this really interesting thing where leaders will hide the lack of trust they have for themselves. And they kind of put on the macho thing where it's like, oh, no, you have to do what I'm saying. Boom, boom, boom. You have to do what I'm saying. And what people want out of their leader is humility. We've talked about this before on the show, probably 10, 15 times, how important it is as a leader to say, I don't know when you don't know something, right? And that brings us right into, the second piece here from Gartner, which is the organizational design and change management. The problem that a lot of people fall into with change management, and that there's so many stories over the last 2 years of this, between the pandemic and now the recession, all these different, moving parts. If you tell your team that you know what's happening and you're wrong, they will hate you and they will quit because you lied to them. If you go to your team and say, I don't know what's happening, but here's the spectrum that I'm looking at and here's the way I will react in there, they're going to respect you and they're going to stick around because they're going to trust you because you had that humility with them to say, I don't know. And that is such an important thing. And I want to throw that over to you. In addition to the humility aspect, what do you think is key for a leader when it comes to that change management and, the organizational design and evolution there?
Starts with the belief in the plan that you're changing to and having a plan to change to, vice willy-nilly throwing it around. And, when you mentioned something earlier, and I've run across this with clients and organizations I used to work for. when things are going south, the good leaders will stand up in front of the team and tell them, hey, things are not looking really good. We are in danger of losing a contract, our profit margin going down significantly to where we're going to have to trim. And when that happens, we're going to have to let people go. And if you have the culture set up right, if you've been talking to people, building that trust, and they trust you and believe in you as a leader, believe in the guidance and plan that you set forth, the outcome and vision that you create, then they're going to work hard. They're not going to quit. The ones that quit, you don't want them on the team anyways. The ones that stick around and say, you know what, boss, I'll take a 10% cut, and I will throw in an extra 10 hours a week in order to make sure that we as an organization. I was just reading Sebastian Young's book Tribe, and he quoted a story from the 60s. And the guy's name begins with an M, and I can't remember. But he had established this culture in this organization. It was a consulting firm, and they had done really well. But 1970s had some problems in the oil and gas industry. Big recession came along. They were losing money, and he said, we're losing. He gave that talk to the team, and the team voluntarily, he made a recommendation, said, you don't have to, but the team voluntarily all took a 10% pay cut. But you know what he did as a leader? He led from the front, and he didn't pay himself. He didn't tell anybody about that because he was a humble leader. He was somebody that wasn't looking for oh, wow, he was great. You know how the team found out? HR saw it on the pay stub. When HR saw it on the pay stub, hey, the boss isn't even paying himself, guys. The boss is, and because they believed in him as the leader, and they believed in the outcome, the ability to bounce back out of this quagmire, this bad situation they were in, because they believed that, not only did they take the 10% cut, but they worked harder, and the business bounced back and succeeded all expectations out of that hole that they had fallen into. Because he created, the culture already existed. This is not something that, oh shit, I remember Otis said that we ought to have a good culture and I should be sharing. When it's all hitting, when the shit's hitting the fan, is not the time to try and create that. It's a little late, right? It's kind of like when Armageddon happens and we got zombies coming up to the door. It's a little late to be going to the Walmart to buy some food and bullets, and because Walking Dead's over now, so now there's whatever other spinoffs. So there'll always be zombies. But you know what? Yeah. It's a little late to prepare for Armageddon once Armageddon's already happened. When did Noah start building his ark? Not when the flood started. Nope. God told him when to build the ark, right? He was prepared. God helped. God said, hey, dude, build that ark, right?
Yeah.
So same thing with your culture. If your culture's screwed up right now, don't wait until you're in a bad situation. If your team is not acting like a team, if you have a group of individuals that come in and collect paychecks after they've worked 40 hours a week or whatever you got them working, man, good luck. Good luck when things get rough, because they're not going to be there. They're not going to be there to right the ship. So create that culture now and make the changes now.
This episode is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose. Our new program, Team Unity by Power Tribe, gives you all the tools that you need to get rid of the dysfunction in your team. You'll have a plan that your team buys into. You'll create more flow in your team to retain your top talent, and you'll reverse your shrinking sales by focusing on your customers. Learn more today at findyourpurpose.coach. Now let's get back to the show. Well, it's like, when we talk, we say this, talking rugby, a lot of people say rugby builds character. No, it doesn't. It exposes character. And the coach can build character in practice beforehand, and they can build the culture. But if you try to build that during a game, nothing's going to happen. No one's going to change because they're already in, right? That's why I love those analogies always at the rugby game, because things keep moving forward. When you're in chaos, that's what's going to happen. Things are always going to keep moving forward. Before we go on to the next one, I want to talk a little bit about uncertainty and creating certainty out of that uncertainty, because I think I have an inkling that some people, when we say that, because I know we say it with Tribe and Purpose, we also say it on the podcast, people think that I have an inkling that people might think that means that you create the plan. And that's all it means. We don't know what's happening, so I make a plan, so now we know what's happening. Your plan's not going to come together. It's not. Things always are going to change. Life is always going to get in the way. When you make a plan, God laughs, right? That's always going to happen. So the plan isn't where the certainty comes from. The certainty comes from the belief in the vision and the leader's ability to adjust the plan, right? And that comes from, in my first example, of the I don't know, but here's what we're looking at. That's where the certainty comes from. We've talked about this before in the kind of the mental health area of one of the exercises that, therapists talk about when you have anxiety is you're basically imagining the worst outcome. And one of the things they tell you to do is imagine the best outcome and then realize that it's somewhere in the middle there. When you talk about creating certainty, it's more like that. It's more like, look, whatever will happen will be okay. Because if this one happens, we can do this. If this one happens, we can do this. Or if it stays in the middle, we don't have to do anything. But you're looking at that spectrum of possible outcomes, and you're creating the certainty that no matter which one of those outcomes comes, because we can't predict the future, but you know that you can adjust. And that's what that certainty is. It's not that you give them the one plan and then it's like, okay, hey, yep, sir, I'm certain that's going to work. No, it's the certainty that you're able to adjust as things come. What do you think that goes back to as a leader? Do you think that kind of goes back to like the humility, being able to talk openly about the spectrum, or do you think there's another soft skill that's in there?
Well, the leader has to have confidence in themselves. You mentioned the trust triad, right? That leg of I have to believe that trust myself, trust the decisions I make is critical to that. And when you trust yourself, you exude trust to others. But you also have to be careful, because I was thinking about this. That guy that always has the answer for everything, and you're like,
yep.
How do you know that? And they talk with such certainty that they present this attitude. Well, okay, sometimes that person's right. But when they're wrong, they're going to screw it up so bad, because they go forward with such almost arrogance and I got this.
Yeah.
And we have to be cautious of that as a team member and as a leader, right? Because as a leader, you have to exude confidence. But like you said, the humbleness has to come in the fact of admitting that, hey guys, I'm not certain on this, or, the other spectrum, it would be, I don't know. But the one that really happens most of the time is, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe that this is the best course of action that we should go. This is the direction that we should go. I think I'm pretty confident in that, because as a leader, if you just stand up and say, nope, this is it. When we do that as a leader, we're squashing the ability of the team to have input. And one of the most important things that we have to have, when you go back to change leadership or change management, is buy-in. And the way you get buy-in is you allow people to voice their opinion. But if you're the type of person that says, this is it, then you establish this black and white line of execution, that squashes the ability for discussion. And, oh, by the way, yes, there are times and places, the building's on fire, everybody go out this door, that sort of thing, the story I always talk about. Yes, there's time and place for that. But if you are the type of leader that says, nope, here's the answer, every time, you are creating a culture in your organization where the team sits back and waits for you to tell them what to do. You may not think you're micromanaging, but you are. When you don't keep that door cracked for somebody to say, because, I've worked with these guys, and a lot of these guys would tell you that anyways, because they would be throwing you out in the next week because you're an asshole and you think you know it all. But you got to keep that door. Hey, guys, this is what I think is the right answer. And you pause just like I did. And what's your reaction, listeners? Your reaction is, hey, can I tell me why you think that's the right answer? I want to hear why you think that, Otis. I want to hear why you think that, boss. Oh, okay. I understand. I agree. Or, no, you know what, boss? I see it a different way. I think we should put a left-handed monkey wrench in there on that instead of a right-handed one, because here's been my experience. We're getting buy-in from the team. And I've done that plenty of times. And I've still there's still those times when you as a leader still have to say, yeah, I hear what you're saying, man, but you know what? We're going to go this way. Thank you. Thank you for that input. We're going to try it this way. And if it's not right, then you know what? We'll come back and we'll grab that left-handed monkey wrench, and hopefully it's not too big of a problem then. But I'm certain enough that I'm going to go this way. You know what I get? I get that guy. I get Bob buying into my plan. All right, I don't agree with you, Otis, but you know what? I hear where you're coming from, and we're going to execute. And I'm going to support the execution.
I know I've told stories like this before, but that's one of my favorite things to do with the higher level rugby, not the little kid stuff, with the college kids at U of N. Here's what I think. You're doing something different. Explain to me your logic on why you're doing that, and I'll explain the logic of why I think you should do something different. And then you just have a dialogue there. And then you reach this point to where if I don't know something, there might be someone else who does have an idea. And then you get that clean exchange of ideas. And when you do that, you're always going to get the better outcome, because, the truth isn't scary, right? The truth is always going to win. And so the way you find that truth is you have that dialogue with your team. We've talked, getting into the third one, employee experience. We've talked buy-in, we talked responsibility, we've talked freedom, and we've talked vision. What else do you think goes into making that employee experience, strong enough that they're sticking around and we're not losing employees?
I lost my focus. Tell me again. Number three.
So we're talking employee experience. Yeah, this is number 3, employee experience. Yeah. So we have talked already: buy-in, responsibility, freedom, vision. What else do you think goes into making that employee experience something that's going to keep them around?
Gratitude is one of them. And really, if you go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, up at the top, once we've got food and water and warmth and security, and we're in number 3, the belongingness and the relationships, the love, that's starting to blend into this also. But really, it is what am I accomplishing something? That feeling, today was trash day. That feeling, and you get trash done, and then you look out on the curb and you see the can out there, and you're like, yeah, got it. That feeling, one of my old bosses, Admiral McRaven, talks about making your bed. You've accomplished something. And you can recognize it yourself. Now, when we start to talk about it in a team environment, that feeling of recognition, the feeling of, hey, good job. I know a lot of people, and I had to learn this also. It's like, he's just doing his job. You know what? You still should tell him good job that he's doing his job. You still, because it is a recognition of that individual's contribution to the organization, to the team's success. We have to recognize that, and we have to give gratitude for that. Otherwise, they're going to start to fall back into what's the minimum requirement, back to our quiet quitting, right? What's the minimum requirement? But you know what? If I can say, hey, man, good job. Appreciate that. And you know what? The 99% of the time the response is, thanks. I'm kind of I've kind of taken, I'm just doing my job, boss, Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're doing a damn good job at your job. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's where it comes in.
Yeah, we had our last session with the Engage Foundation this last week, and I had a parent come up to me, and it makes me think of our conversation around this time last year, talking about accepting gratitude. She was so thankful, and I'm just doing my job. I love rugby. You couldn't keep me out of that field, right? But it does mean a lot to me, even as much as, I'm just doing my job, that type of thing, it does mean a lot, even if the person isn't showing it. And I think the only other thing that I'd add as we're talking about the employee experience is the flow inside of the team. And a lot of this comes from the leader and the cultural aspects that we're talking about, and getting rid of those assholes like you talked about. But then I think the other piece there, people, there's like this joke almost of like in corporate America of, well, our team is upset, so let's throw a pizza party. And we'll have a pizza party and we'll get together. If your team hates each other, that's just going to make things worse. Those things only work in addition to having a good team culture and having flow inside of your team. I think back to our high school rugby team when we do those movie nights. Our team loved those, and it brought us close together as a team because we already all loved each other. And so spending that extra time together gets you even closer. And if you're not at that point, then you can't make that jump. It's not actually going to help anything. If anything, it might exacerbate the issues that are already there. Because what happens is if your experience is already bad and you get more of that experience, you're not going to want to be there. You're going to be negative. You're going to bring a negative mindset in. Things are going to get worse and worse and worse. So it starts off with the culture of gratitude and, leading, getting buy-in from the team, giving them the responsibility of freedom, the vision, and having a team that genuinely likes each other. And that should be a goal inside the organization because that's how you're going to improve the employee experience. One of the reasons we both love what we do so much is because we love working together. And then Norman, our other team member here at Tribe and Purpose, we love working with him. And it creates an awesome environment. When we get on our calls, it's fun. We have fun going through our work stuff. If you threw us a pizza party, we would have fun because we all like each other. That's how it works, right? But if you don't have that inside of your team, it's kind of like you were talking about earlier of trying to, build the culture up while you're already in the Armageddon. You can't do that. You have to build the culture before, right? And I think that really brings us into, the fourth one, and we can kind of touch on this quickly because to me, this goes, if you hit these first three, the fourth one comes a little bit more naturally, but it's the recruiting side of things. We're talking basically talent retention so far, giving people what they want so they can stay. And then the next step of that is attracting that new talent and bringing them in. So what would you add in addition for the recruiting aspect? So actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. We've covered how to keep people. And if you have a good culture, you'll attract good people, right? Mm-hmm. What do you do to sell your culture to the new person, to sell your vision to that new person? What does that look like as a leader?
Well, if you start with the very basics, one of the methods I've seen that I think is fairly successful is the job description. And in the job description, the company culture is described. Now, anybody can write something up that makes it sound like a good culture, right? But you have to start there because that's your initial contact with a possible candidate. And they have to look at that job description and say, okay, yes, I'm qualified for this job, but why do I want to work for Tribe and Purpose? Well, I want to work for Tribe and Purpose because here's what it says about the culture of the organization. And those sort of things, sometimes they can feel a little hokey, but it establishes an anchor point, if you will. And that anchor point of this is who we are. This is how we solve problems. This is how we work together. And I wouldn't be putting kegerators and ping pong tables and pizzas and free lunches and all that sort of stuff. That's not culture. Just like you said, those are activities that can, and that a good culture, a team will have fun enjoying, but that doesn't create the culture. So don't list those things. Don't list, how you have free massages or a safe space room or whatever those sort of things are. Those aren't creating the culture. Those are activities that may be a differentiator, but they're just activities that add on to a better culture. They're not going to create the culture. So describing the culture, how you make decisions, how you work together, what the work environment is like, those things are what's important in order to create that on that job description, so that individual that's scanning through Indeed, Monster, or whatever job it is, whatever posting it is, says, okay, yep, I'm qualified. Why? Yeah, that sounds interesting. Sounds like it's a good fit for me, So now I'm going to do that. So the next step is, well, what happens during the interview? This is a key piece that I think a lot of hiring managers mess up. They become desperate to fill the position because they know that their current team is struggling. There's somebody's left, we got to backfill it, and other people are getting burned out, or the business is expanding and I need to get people in place to support the growth of the business going forward, all those sort of things. But man, if that person doesn't fit, and one of my favorite quotes of all time from Bo Schembechler when he was at the University of Michigan, and they were the super powerhouse, top 2 or 3 team every year. A reporter asked him early on in the season, how come, Bobby Jones, not the kid's name, but how come you didn't work harder to get Bobby Jones on your team? Bobby, you allowed this blue chipper, Bobby Jones, to go to Ohio State. You're our arch rival. Coach, how come you allowed that to happen? And Coach replied back to the reporter, I allowed that to happen because if Bobby Jones was on our team, he would be beating us every day. But he's at Ohio State. He can only beat us once a year. And when you think about that person that you are pulling out of the world population to place into your team, make sure they're a good fit. Make sure they're a good fit, and then make sure they're a good fit again. However you do that, and there's lots of ways of doing that. We won't get into that in this show. But you know what? Skills, qualifications, those are secondary. You better make sure that person's a good fit, or else he'll be your Bobby Jones beating your team every day.
Yeah. And, the only thing I'd add is when we talk about the job description, those type of things, we talked about this in the quiet quitting episode of the red flags of a business. And those red flags are very similar to the right thing to do. And the difference there is, are you telling or are you showing? We're a family here. We're a family. Don't you want to join the family? Now that's a cult, right? But you see the employees treating each other like a family. That's where you want to be. It sounds like a subtle difference, but it makes a world of difference for that person looking to come into your organization, because you're not just talking about doing it, you're doing it. And that's the huge difference there. I want to bring us into the last piece, which is the future of work. And really what this comes down to me, it kind of goes back to the change management, but it's dealing with the chaos and the uncertainty. And I just want to throw that over to you. As a leader, what can you do to, again, create that certainty inside your organization and to, throw it up your Green Beret term, become a master of that chaos?
Yeah. Well, a master of chaos has to understand that it's not really chaos. That's number one. If you feel like it's chaos, then you're in the wrong position. You need to sit down, reassess yourself, make sure that you don't see it as chaos, because when you see chaos, all you see is red. You don't see solutions. Mm-hmm. So whether you pause and do some breathing techniques, or go for a walk, or do some push-ups, or go to the gym, whatever it is, stop the madness. Because when you stop the madness, you can see solutions. And then the way that you solve the problem as a leader is you create a vision for the outcome. You create a vision that leads you out of the quagmire, leads the team out of the quagmire, to let them know it's going to get better. People have to believe that life will be better tomorrow than it is today. Today is pretty good. But if today is pretty good and I settle for tomorrow to be just like today, then tomorrow is no longer pretty good. Tomorrow becomes okay. And then the next day is okay. And then the next day is like, And it just kind of, because guess what? Guess what's happening? You're stagnated, you're flatlined, the rest of the world is moving forward. Change is happening whether you want it or not. So as a leader, if you create, when you create, you shouldn't if, you should create a vision for what will be. Where will we be in 5 years? My favorite timeline. Where will we be in 5 years? And oh, by the way, Joe, Sally, Fred, Sue, here's where you are in that vision I have in 5 years. Here's how you fit into this. I see you being the director of operations. I see you being the shipping manager. I see you. That's buy-in. And now me put my employee hat on. Guess what I see? I see a future for myself. I see the top of my Maslow's hierarchy of needs, my self-actualization, achieving my full purpose and my full potential. I see that in the future. And I see that with this team, in this organization, in this business. And when that happens, I'm bought into it. We're going to go through the crap. We're going to go through the shit. I know it's not going to be perfect every day. But I know that you as the leader believe in me, and I believe and I see the vision that you've created, and I believe in that because you know what? I'm a part of it. And I see how I can have more success and fulfillment in my life in the future.
We've talked through a lot of amazing things for leaders and, things that they should add in to their tool belts, that, their soft skills, that they can create these outcomes for their team, be a more effective leader, get them confident in their ability to manage change, improve their employee experience, improve the recruiting, and then cast that vision for the future of work. But Dad, what I don't get is, how can I as a leader do this right now? What can I do to get these changes inside of my own organization? Is there some sort of tool or program that is out there that could help me with my team?
Whoa! This is like the setup like Zach gave us in the show a couple of shows ago, and I just did a nice little nice little thought swing and knock it out of the center field park. Well, you join Unity by Power Tribe, because what we do there is we help you understand. We start with phase one, who you are. You got to know who you are. You got to create your own vision for success. Then we help you establish for your team what's the purpose, vision, goals, and plan for your team. That's step two, phase two. And then phase three is, how do we organize our team for greater success? How do we make sure that, hey, guess what? There's stovepipes. There's always stovepipes because there's rice bowls. And when there's rice bowls, there's stovepipes, right? The little metaphor of, this is my rice bowl, you're not going to have any of my rice. But you know what? In phase three, in Unity by Power Tribe, your team is okay with sharing their rice from my bowl to your bowl, from connecting the pipes at various points as they go up to make sure that there's a full exchange of information. We help you create that organization, and not just create it, but have your team buy into those changes. Because the number one success, and one of my favorite business books is Leading Change by Kotter, Kottrer. The theme throughout the book is buy-in. Getting buy-in. When you have buy-in from the members of your team, that change will be successful. Whatever that change is, it may not be what you think it is when you start, but you recognize that, and your team recognizes that, And that's how you have that success. So go to findyourpurpose.coach and sign up for a quick 15-minute vision analysis call to see if Unity by Power Tribe is a good fit for you. But before we do that, and before you do that, before we end the show, you got to know what you learned, Camden. So what did you learn?
You said this early on, a problem gets smaller when it's confronted. And I had never heard that. I really like that because, so much, it's like we suffer more in imagination than reality, right? The problem's always bigger than we think it is. And until you get there, till you square up on it, it always seems like it's so big. But once you square up, you realize, hey, it's not as big as you think, right? So that was a big one for me. Problem gets smaller when it's confronted. How about you, Dad?
Well, for me, it's, just revisiting my favorite quote about teams with Bo Schembechler's, the guys, they got to be the right fit. Just because, and we talked about the NFL draft and the intangibles, the soft skills, if you will. Just because they may be the best, the fastest 40, they've got the best running back skills in college. Does that mean they're a fit for your organization? There's several sports teams out there, to include USA Rugby, that are struggling with that right now. Texas A&M football struggling with that right now. What is our identity? Do all these people, Texas A&M, great example. Oh my goodness, great example of number one blue chip recruiting class in the nation. And are they even going to have a winning record? Are they going to break even? I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but you know what? That just shows.
I don't think so.
Just because you got the talent doesn't mean you're going to win. Another. I just drew a blank on his name. What time is it? You mean now, Bob? No, my baseball philosopher talks about that all the time. Yogi Berra, thank you. I was stuck on Bob Uecker for some reason. But Yogi Berra talks about that, all the talent in the world doesn't win the game. Yeah. It's the team that wins the game.
I got to add one thing because we talked about this before. I've been thinking it so much watching A&M football this year versus great example, compare it to U of A football, who won one game in the last 3 seasons before this year, right? U of A had a culture of the work and buying in and supporting each other. A&M had a culture of winning. When you lose and your culture is winning, your culture's gone. And I think we've talked about that before, but I wanted to really make that point because I think about that all the time. If your culture is just winning, as soon as you lose, your team quits. Go ahead.
We talked about that as rugby coaches. We talked about that. And how do we fix that? So, yeah. Hey, and I gotta one more thing before we wrap up. Those of you on the YouTube, this is for those of you listening. On the YouTube, you see that I got my Ranch Sense hat on. My good buddy Jimmy sent me this hat. Ranch Sense, I'm going to give a shout out to Ranch Sense because it's a great company. I love what they're doing. Ranch Sense, if I can't talk today, Ranch Sense helps landowners and ranchers oversee their property from anywhere in the world. I'm all about that. By sending up-to-date ranch conditions directly to their devices. So think about that. Hey, if you got some land out there and you're wondering, is my stock tank got water in it? Is the gate open that's supposed to be open? And is the gate closed that's supposed to be closed? And you don't want to drive that hour and a half, 3 hours, whatever it is, depending on the size of your land or the location of where you are. You want to be assured that exists, that there's water in the stock tank, that gate is closed, it's supposed to be closed. Check out Ranch Sense, and it's just simple, ranchsense.com. And give Jimmy a shout. Yeah, so great company, great organization, and I love what they're doing. So, Camden,
they got to send me a ball cap. No free ads.
All right, I'll let Jimmy know. Run us out, Camden.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to the Cam Otis Show. And a special thanks to the hospitality. We don't got a guest today, but the hospitality of my sister Sierra and her husband Patrick got this lovely room, this great studio. Got one of the better backgrounds I probably have with these pretty plants. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass along to someone else so that they can enjoy it too and that they can learn something as well. You can check out full archive for episodes at thecamotishow.com. And of course, you can watch the videos of the full episode on our YouTube page at the Cam and Otis Show. Thank y'all so much for listening, and we'll see y'all next time.